Hey guys, I've got a more simple video today, nice cozy video. So basically what I'm going to be doing is making this 1950s sundress pattern. It's a commercial pattern, it's Advance 5190, and it was released in 1949, and it's just for like this sundress pattern that became really popular throughout the 1950s. So what I'm doing right now is laying out my pattern pieces on this pink embroidered cotton fabric. I like to trace my patterns first onto my own paper before using them, just so that I don't damage the original, and I prefer just directly not to work from it. I bought 2 yards of fabric, which was cutting it a little bit close, and so I had to thin down some of the panels a little bit to make it fit, but that was mostly okay because in this period, post-war, skirts were really getting a lot wider, and so I had the allowance to do that. Then I just went around and cut all my notches and marked all the marks that I had to do. To mark my perforations, I'm using a disappearing ink pen, and I'm basically just marking one layer of fabric and letting it bleed through to the other side, just so that I could save a little bit of time. This pattern happened to not be a printed pattern. It's a bit late for us to not be seeing printed patterns here in 1949, but they mark the darts using perforations instead. So moving on to the construction of the dress. The first step is join center back seam of backs of dress A matching notches 1. Join seams of back of dress and side backs B matching notches 2. Clip seams at waistline and press open. So basically what they want me to do is, since this dress is a princess cut, they just want me to join the 4 back pieces together. So the 2 center back pieces, because there's a seam down the center back, and then the 2 side back pieces. The next step is make underarm darts in side front C by bringing sets of small perforations together on the inside. Baste and stitch darts tapering to points at single perforations. Press downwards. Let's be honest, they're just darts, so I didn't baste them. Basically, I just connected my perforations, pinned down that line, and stitched it on my machine. And I don't remember, but I probably didn't press them either, because let's be honest, I never press my darts. Moving on to the second part of step 2. So this is much like the back, basically just join all the front seams and clip them at the waistline so that everything sits a bit smoother. Step 3 is join the side seams matching notches 6, leave the left side open between the medium perforations in the back for the placket. Clip the right seam at the waistline. Press seams open. So at first I followed these instructions, leaving an open space at the waist where I could insert a zipper, but when I went to try on the dress, I found that I couldn't get it on because in order for these side closures to work, basically your bust measurement has to be able to fit over your shoulders, and I've got quite broad shoulders and a small bust measurement, and so that doesn't really work for me. So what I ended up doing is leaving the side seam open right up into the underarm so that I could get on the dress a bit easier. And while trying on the dress, I was very pleased to discover that they'd inflated the size on this pattern, and so it was way too large for me. So the measurements listed on the pattern were the usual vintage size 12, so 30-inch bust, 25-inch waist, 33.5-inch hips, I think. And those are pretty much my exact measurement, so, you know, I assumed it would fit. That's why I bought the commercial pattern and didn't draft it myself. But actually, there were a good, 2 extra inches over the bust, so this really was more of a size 14 pattern, more than a size 12. Yeah, vintage vanity sizing is quite interesting, and I feel like most people wouldn't expect it to be the case. So step 4 is to do the closure, just like the placket or the zipper or whatever you plan on doing. I did that later, so I skipped that for now. Step 5 is to add the white band along the top. So it says fold band E and seam the sides. Trim the seams. Turn the band right side out and baste the cut edges. Baste the band to the upper edge of the dress, with ends at center front, matching notches 7 in the back and 8 in the front. Again, all this notch stuff really wasn't helpful to me at this point because I'd had to do so many alterations to get the dress to fit me, so I was quite displeased with Advance at this point. Step 6 has to do with the shoulder straps. So it says, seam the side edges of shoulder strap F, matching notches 9. Trim the seam. Turn and press. Baste straps to the dress at the medium perforations on the band, with fold edges towards center front and center back, keeping the cut edges even. Step 7 is to baste a bias facing 1.5 inches wide to the upper edge of the dress, seam the bias on the straight of material at the underarm seam. The upper edge is finished after trying on the dress to allow for adjustment of straps if necessary. Allow dress to hang overnight, adjust the lower edge to hang evenly, that's later. Anyway, I went ahead and did that bias facing stuff, and actually, this sounds like I'm so mad at the pattern company, but because I had to adjust the pattern myself, I accidentally made it a bit too tight fitting because there's just so much bulk around the top edge. You know, usually the pattern would have the correct ease to accommodate for that, but I fitted it kind of loosely back when it was just a single piece of fabric without the layers of the bias strip and the white piece along the top and then all the seam allowances because of that, so that when all that stuff was added, the dress is actually quite tight on me now, and I'm just kind of disappointed. And back to the bias facing, I also edge stitched that and felled it down as invisibly as possible. Straying from the directions a little bit, I then inserted my zipper. All I had was a yellow zipper, but honestly at this point I didn't really care because the dress didn't really fit great anyway. So yeah, I just pinned that in place, stitched it with an overlap so that it would be kind of hidden. And my zipper was a little bit short, so I just went ahead and stitched up the remaining length below the zipper. Also not in the directions, I wanted to add pockets to this dress because I was looking at a lot of 1950s examples and they'd added big patch pockets along the side. And first off, pockets, everyone loves pockets, but it's also kind of an allusion to widen the hips, and I thought that would be cool to try. So I have here a tracing of the side panel, and I'm basically just spreading that and adding some paper in between so that my pattern piece will be a little bit wider along the top and further aid that illusion of width at the hips, while also giving you extra space to put your hands in your pockets. And just for added detail, I also curved the top. Then I went ahead and cut that out of my scraps and bound the top edge with some twill tape, just so that it would match the white band that I'd put along the top, and I just turned down the edges and stitched that into place as a patch pocket. If I was thinking, I could have inserted this into the seam and done all that stuff, but honestly this way is just easier, and I think either way it looks fine. Then I just turned up my hem, I think it was about 2 inches, and I was finished. So this is what the dress ended up looking like. Honestly, my only complaint with it is just how tight it is along the top. And actually I made this dress around a year ago and I just didn't bother posting the footage because by the time I edited it, it was already winter. And so just last night, to make the dress a bit more wearable, I kind of just disassembled the top half with all the facings and the white strip and everything, and just took room out of the seam allowances to make it a bit wider, and it does fit a lot better, but not as well as it could. So I'll definitely keep that in mind for the future, just making sure I leave some ease for any layers of bulk that might be added as I continue the project. I hope you guys enjoyed this unscripted, impromptu voiceover. Instead of the usual hours it takes me to write and record, I actually got this done in 20 minutes, so that was cool. Thanks so much for watching, and if you feel like it, you can subscribe for more vintage sewing, vintage needlework, and fuzzy sock plushies. See you next time!